this up is I'm actually speaking at this event. I believe Ken as well. We're talking about Azure, more cloud stuff at that event. I'll be talking about using cloud and mobile development at that event. So it's a little bit more pricey, but if you want to go to a more professional level conference, definitely do check that out. They keep mentioning about the Montreal Jazz Festival, so I'm thinking that's going to be a good time for us. So definitely do check that out. Okay, so let me walk through the schedule. So we've got a bit of a change on the schedule. We don't have our second speaker, so what we're going to do is basically, Jeff has agreed to kind of put more content into his talk. So hopefully by about 10:30 we can kind of wrap up, give you guys a bit of break, because we got plenty of coffee, water, and food down there. You saw all the food, so please eat that up. And if you haven't visited the swag table and picked up a shirt, do so.
Let's just see code first, and then we'll deal with that after. How are we for font? Do I need to make this a little bit bigger?
Yes.
I was afraid you were going to say that. WebStorm. Should add this. Hopefully this works. Better?
Nice color scheme.
Switch to the light thing.
Pardon?
Switch to the light thing.
Oh boy. So this is what the code's going to be about. So let's customize my ID together.
And you got 3 spaces there, buddy.
2 spices is right. Hold on, what the hell? Warm neon? No, that's the worst thing ever. Why would somebody do that? That looks better. No. Why is it all black and why did I do that? There we go. Is that better? Sure. Maybe. Let's find out together, everyone. Is that better? Yes, no?
Yes.
Okay.
Bigger font.
I know, hold on, man. I'm trying to deal with my nerves here. So nervous. We're in a happy state?
Can we go back to black?
That is a good song. But no,
Okay.
that is my jam. Alright, so let's start with the basics. Who knows what an if statement is? GitHub. Well, used GitHub before, yes? You can't say no because we'll all point at you and laugh at you. So if you go to, I'll add it to the meetup or however we want to share this thing. And if you go to this thing, it tells you get the code number you want. The basic thing you do is you open up a command shell. So people have not done this before, it might be a little weird. But if you navigate to, let's say, wherever your folder is, so Visual Studio, whatever you want to use for this, doesn't matter. Visual Studio actually supports JSX, which is not the greatest. And so people who, oh, here's a nice tip for Windows people, the sad Windows people like me. Everyone knows how to do that, right? Yay. Fun, command line. All right, so you want to start with, I think I have command windows open already. So let's go. Okay, oh, command line, it's so scary. Okay, so the first thing you do is run npm install. I shouldn't have to do anything because I already prepared. I prepared for my presentation. Good boy. So what it does, it's going to. What am I going to start with? Oh, it's all color, different color now. I'm so confused. So they're going to see a package.json file for you. Create an app that has like npm. Package.json is used to be your packages.config, which is now your packages.json, and the new version of .NET. It's just your dependencies. So all the things you depend on. So high level, short, quick version. Dependencies are the things you need in your code for your code to run in the browser. So React, obviously we need React to do a React app. Lodash. JavaScript developers, if you haven't used Lodash, please do. It's awesome. It helps a lot with collections. It really has some really good, useful features that, especially coming from the C# world, a lot of useful kind of things, paradigms compared to like Link and stuff like that. You do your .any, your takes, and all those kind of interesting, cool things. If you're using JavaScript and not doing Lodash, you're doing it wrong. That's what I hear. You're not doing it wrong. Don't let anyone tell you that. So dev dependencies are the things you need to build your code. So things you're working on, you want to run your unit tests. So we have our tape here. So our tape is our test runner, of course. Webpack is the thing that bundles our app together, wraps up in a nice bow, says we're ready for the browser. And then some other things. ESLint, ESLint configure and VB, all those awesome things. And then lots of Babel stuff. Okay? I could probably do about half hour on this, but I will not. I want people to fall asleep. Okay, so first thing we do is your toilet's flush. Besides that, we do some other things. Let's quickly look at this. Internet EMB. I'm going to show you this because I really care about linting. And I have extra time, right? What else do you guys want to do? Eat some fruit? Yeah, right. Want to eat fruit?
Jeff, I have a question.
Yes.
Visual Studio Code, is it capable of doing all the libraries?
Yes. Visual Studio Code. A lot of people actually are starting to use Visual Studio Code for it. Pretty much any idea. So WebStorm, all the hipsters for your Sublime, you're all good, or actually Vims and section, which talks about React and all their stuff. So the interesting thing about React and the talk I've done previously is, so we'll talk about the thing I was doing wrong in my code, which is the arrow function. They say not to do it. The thing I talked about before is, the weird thing about React was the change from the people who like do JavaScript, the people who are well known for the JavaScript. RDP is one of them because their style guide's really popular, and they've done some interesting things. A lot of people migrated to React from Backbone and those kind of interesting things. They didn't migrate to things like Angular talks about happening. Things like Angular, because it's not as good. Okay, it's fine. It's really not as good. But so because they're able to switch part of their apps along. So the whole thing is, most of the time we're not doing file new projects, right? Most of the time we're not doing file new. Most of the time we have the existing one, and we're just gonna things changing. So it was a simpler paradigm for a lot of these companies to switch to. So that's what they jumped on it. So they have all kinds of great information on how you should structure React code. Not getting into that, but it's thought it would be of interest. I'll add those things to the GitHub or somewhere, and I'll share it today before I leave.
Yeah, so I'll make sure to get that stuff from you.
Yeah, I'll get a GitHub and I'll put some links, useful links on my GitHub page, just if you are interested. Okay, cool. Well, let's talk about some runs. All right, so the first thing you do is when you get all the dependencies, it'll run a bunch of things. It'll have a million folders under here for people who are new to this. Lots of these, lots of these things. Because everything, like JavaScript library has like 8 lines of code in it, and you use it as a dependency. They actually had an NPM issue. I don't know if people follow that. About 3 months ago, one guy was so angry he removed his project from NPM, and it was used by like a large percentage of all like JavaScript libraries. So they did this thing they're not supposed to. They actually put it back online for him, and which they're not supposed to do based on the thing. But they had this like weird clause they're allowed to. So it broke like NPM for hours.
I'm taking my ball and going home.
Yes, basically. And they're like, no. You thought it was your ball, but it's actually not your ball. That's what happened. Okay, so npm start. So if you look at every time these npm commands, they all map to your package.json file, which is this hideous thing we look at here. Bounce this down a bit. So there's a scripts folder that allows you to do different things. One of them is this npm start, which sets up a web server for you and builds your component. And what it does, as you're changing code, let's pin this over now. Let's show our browser. Let's show our awesome app. We're gonna have to zoom out. It's gonna be hard to see, but it doesn't really matter what the app is. You can play it if you want. You just marble characters, and you can add which ones you like. And you can add which favorite series is which there's your favorite series, and why is it not working? Not sure. Hold on. Is it an old version, maybe? Oh no, something's wrong. Oh, hold on. I know what it is. So this is the GitHub Windows install that you should probably make sure before you sync. There we go. Should be good. Sync failed. No. I don't need this. All right, let's do this again. This is a great stall tactic, isn't it? You guys are so excited right now. So it should be okay. I don't know what's wrong with that, but it should be alright.
Maybe it's working all right, guys?
Yeah, it's fine. It's not a big deal. It's just, I can't set favorite series, which I think will all survive. Booyah! At the sink. And then Mark was fixing style for me. Thanks, Mark.
Just little touches.
I don't like we did the button. Do it again, please.
Yeah. Just have that one.
Do what you did, but only different. It was great work. So yeah, so this is your app, and so if you run this command, I added this. So what it does, it kind of creates one giant JavaScript file. Which, if you look at it, how am I supposed to? It's only got 30,000 lines of code, maybe 60,000 lines of code in it. Very good for debugging. No, I'm kidding. What it does do when you put that debug thing on, it actually will create. Should create. Why is it creating? It should create the source maps for it. Oh. It's gotta be that. Maybe not. Okay. So anyways, there's usually source maps, and you look at the code files the way they are, the way before they're compiled into one app. So look at some tests. So to run the tests, I'll go to new command window. And then I have this watch command that all it does is constantly lints and runs your tests. Run, watch. And it'll listen for any changes. And as you make changes, it's going to lint your code, run your unit tests for you. Nothing like unit tests in command line, right? It's so awesome. But it'll break if there's any issues. So if I do something horrendous, like let's say, I did something like this, then it should be like very sad. And say, hey, there should be no space. And you fix it. You get an ID that syncs up with your linter, so you do Control-Alt-L in WebStorm, or for the Visual Studio, Control-KD. We all know that in Visual Studio, right? It formats it, but this will format it based on your linting guides. So you hook that up with WebStorm, whatever ID you use, I'm sure they most do it, and then you just do Control-Alt-L, it does all your space formatting for you. All the really important stuff. So WebStorm will do things like, if you've used Resharper before, it's JetBrains, same company, so it's like refactor tips and stuff like that. I'm behind this monitor. It's gonna hide. How are we doing? Good? All right, cool. So tests, now if you want to see your tests, usually the naming standard I use, and if you look at my package.json, it'll look under those folders. So it has this npm watch, which runs the test command, and there's all this magic stuff. So the npm has built-in reserved words, like publish and test. And so if you run test and you have a thing called pretest, it'll run the pretest before the test. So it'll run your lint before it runs your unit test. So if you have a linting error, it'll fail even before your tests run. Which is good because it takes a little time, so it might as well fail early. Or not fail at all, depends how you feel. Yeah, so that's the basic running and the linting, all that kind of interesting work, and then the unit tests look like this. So you'll have this good one here, some deep freeze, fit on the thing, and then you'll have your actual thing in testing, which is, which one we're testing? Get character for the series. What did I just say with that? It's the wrong thing, that's why I'm saying character of the series. Try it again. There we go. Cool. All right. So here's my test function that tests that method. So do the basic stuff first, where I build my character up. Again, I do my deep freeze before I build my test up. So I make sure this function will not mutate anything I pass to it. Okay. That's the testing stuff, and you can browse that if you want. So the BEM stuff is kind of cool. So if you have this, let's work our way down through this quick. So here's our app. So our app has a bunch of state things that happen. So one of the hooks is get initial state. So you're saying when this component first becomes a component, let's give it some initial things. So let's say you want to have a default value for a property, that's your opportunity to do it. You at least say, this object should start at this level. So that's your initial state of your component. That's what that is. So again, all my components, besides this app one, are stateless, pure components. So this one has, again, a large app that's not going to be realistic to have your one node app to do everything. But again, from a beginner point of view, starting, it's good enough for most things you're going to need at the beginning when you're learning. Cool, this is fun. All right, then you have all these functions again. They're pretty basic things. So if you look at the app that's rendered, I'm going to close this thing. So, I'm gonna go on that. So this is your render function. So this is our app. So it's a kind of big component. So there's a lot of things going on there. But it's kind of what you saw before. You see some bench stuff happening with the app __ menu. So that app thing, anything goes in it. It's all. And then you have a section title. So all that really is, I find it useful to do this, is you start wrapping these things. So you do like a section title, it's got a class name associated with it, which is section title. And then if you look at it, there's a partner CSS file with it. Components with their CSS together. Kind of beside each other. Beside each other, and then you style them that way. Again, we got hard-coded things in here that you may not want, but that's fine, it's just for example case. Again, so you have your section title, and that has its own style. So in your app, you can just say, I want to use a section title. I don't care what section title is. It's like an HTML tag. I pass in what React calls children component. Yes?
This is kind of a side question.
Sure.
A lot of, like, this is a lot of code. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, whoa, okay.
Yeah.
Because we're going into the deep end
Yes.
with a lot of this stuff.
Yes.
Which is cool, because really the reality is this is
I
where
go
you
off the
start.
deep end a lot, but go ahead.
Yeah. A lot of this stuff, is it something you start with a template to kind of do a lot of this work? Or is it, a lot of this we're seeing is you have to code this?
You write code.
What's that?
You write the code. You totally, there's no like template to it. It just, you don't have to use JSX. This is just a helper that almost everyone uses JSX.
Okay.
It was the part that everyone hated, but it's the part that everyone likes the most now. Because at first it's really weird. It's like, what are you doing? I like templates so much better. Because it's not really a template. Because again, these are JavaScript functions for the most part. Like section title, these are functions. But don't worry about that. Don't let that get in your way. But again, this is a lot of code. But if you look at something more like, I don't know, hero card, that's not so bad. So hero card is this. Let's pop this over. Is this thing, this little card here. So that in itself, it's going to be really hideous now. Yeah. Okay, cool. So hero card is its own component and not that much code. So this is another little helper function that class names. So if you want to conditionally apply classes, you can use that. So all that's doing is saying, if it's a favorite character, then I add that extra class to it. So it kind of builds your object of CSS classes together. So it's based on the state of that prop that comes in. So based on the value of the prop, you get different CSS class applied to your element.
I like this a lot because the JavaScript is very clean.
Yeah, so you can really break things up really small. Again, you can't get much smaller than this. But this is a useful thing to have. Instead of having to put class names everywhere, then you gotta go find and change those later. See, this component is how I do my section titles, and it's very semantic in a way where you can just say, this is my section title, this is kind of thing. So if you look at the hero card CSS, we have some flex stuff in here, so people want to flex. Again, you have all your stuff, and these are all the elements. So let's look at this quick. Little refresher. So your block is your hero card. So that's its component, that's its block, that's everything within it. Here's my styles for it, all that stuff. And then here is a modifier. So is this card a favorite card? So you put them together, and that's how you get your thing. And then you have your section, your elements within the block. So you're gonna have an image element and all that. And again, they don't have to be nested. As long as they belong to that block, they're all at the same level. Because image is actually a child to image section, but it doesn't really matter. because there's only going to probably be an image section within this whole thing. It's all namespaced. A little weird, but CSS becomes less annoying. Still annoying, but less annoying. Okay? Anything else anybody wants to see here that they want to look more at? Let me know. 'Cause I can take requests. We have a few more minutes. If you guys want to see anything in particular, yeah.
What flex?
So Flex, if you don't have to worry about so last time I did this talk, I had to worry about IE8. I'm so happy now. I'm like a happier person in general because I don't have to support it anymore. Flex as of Mark IE10.
IE10.
IE10, but still there's some weird issues there. But most people don't have IE10. They're either like IE8 or 11 or something like that. I think most situations is that. So if you don't have to support them, you can use it. What Flex does, what's a good example of it? CSS tricks, let's do that. That's actually a useful thing. So if you don't, so centering things is hard, right? In CSS. CSS. I think CSS tricks is a good example for it. I think this is it. Flex. Perfect. So it's Flex does, hope I'm on the right thing.
Nope.
Am I on the right thing?
Nope.
Wrong one. Should have put tricks in it. Does that. Right? Yes?
That's good.
Yeah. So what Flex does with very little, wrong way, with very little code, has some defaults in it, but will like equally space out your containers, your block elements, all those things like that. Kind of gets rid of that. You can wrap things. So if you use Bootstrap and use like the columns, and the columns run out of space, it puts it to the next thing. Kind of does that stuff for you. The next version of Bootstrap, Bootstrap 4 that's coming out, you can actually turn on Flex, and all their new grids are actually going to use Flex to flex everything out. And the other things it does is do interesting things, like it fills out the space vertically, if you want to. There's a good example of it.
So it's defining the rules and how your
Yeah.
elements are basically positioned on
Yeah.
the screen.
So you can baseline things, you can center them, you can stretch them. Really useful. Like I was like my CSS painting yesterday, I was struggling with it because I'm getting used to it. Some weird things there. Because if you look at the code, there's like flex within flex within flex. And Mark fixed it for me. He said a margin auto, and that ruined everything. One margin auto. That's why I hate CSS so much. Oh, perfect. I know you did it for your, but still, I appreciate it anyways. So yeah, if you do interesting like that, you can stretch things out so you don't have the, you always have the weird little CSS things and you have to like do some weird, oh no! Perfect, no, that's fine. Ken's all right.
Prefer to not wash my hands.
Yes, please, don't watch me again. Just don't touch anyone until it's over. Okay, so that's Flex. Anything else? Anyone else want to see or hear anything more before I finish?
Life cycle methods,
Yeah, what about it?
you have them here?
Sure, I have lots of them. I have some in my car. Hold on. All right, so let's see, life cycle methods. On my app I did. So if you look at app, I think I showed it.
I should probably point out that the tool that Jeff's using, WebStorms, JetBrains is actually one of the sponsors for today. So
That's
you
why I'm using it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They're giving you a check for this. I see.
I have a JetBrains tramp stamp on my lower back right now. Anyways, go ahead.
Someone
Finish.
please tweet that.
Yeah, the guy in the back. The guys in the back will do that for you. They'll appreciate that. I'll make sure it's CC'd.
Yeah. They want to see it though, that's the problem.
So we're gonna get raffle tickets. So that's gonna be one of the prizes. You can actually get a license for WebStorm. So.
Yeah, I really like it. So we have Visual Studio, we have Visual Studio Enterprise, but for JavaScript, it's gotten better. It's just not there yet. WebStorm is still better. Like things like this, you can control click it, it takes you right to that component. You navigate through. You do control shift. So people use ReSharper before. You can say character, info, all those kind of cool things that ReSharper has. WebStorm has. Same company. That makes sense. Yes. Lifecycle hooks. Don't want to see those?
Yeah.
I didn't forget. Totally forgot. All right. Okay. So app the only thing it has is get initial state. The big one for me is this. Honestly, their website's really. That's all I ever need. I don't need I really need to Google anything, the website's got it covered because it's such a basic. React is a very small thing, really. It looks like a lot different, like the code looks different, but for the most part, it's not a huge change. Like when we have new developers come on, it's actually not that big of a transition. So you know a little JavaScript? It's actually none of that. So is the, life cycle. Okay. So the big things, and they really explain it well. And you'll have things like, so you want things like next props. So you have things like should component update. So you can have things in there. If you have an expensive, let's say you have an expensive collection, and you don't want to go through the diff algorithm. You want to just say, is this thing different? I know it's different, render. Or don't even bother rendering because it's expensive. They say at the beginning, don't worry about any of that. It's pretty quick. 98% of the time, you don't need any of these lifecycle hooks for performance. But if you need it in a specific case, you can say in here, oh, the props are the same or the state's the same. Don't bother rendering. But when people make a mistake of, they'll have this big R, they'll do a deep equal on it to see if it's changed. But the act of the deep equal is probably almost as expensive as the fact that we're doing a diff algorithm anyways. So things like I did talk about as immutable JS and these immutable data structures. If something changes in it, they're a different object in a way. So you can just say, is this thing different? Even though one little thing changed, you'll be like, yeah, it's different. If it's the same, it makes things a lot easier if you have performance issues. At the beginning, it's rare I've had them. I had issues where we had to render a couple thousand table rows. I don't know why you'd want that, but we had to. It's really, who's ever gonna want that? And stuff like that, you want some help there. But for most things, you're not gonna need it, so don't worry about it, especially if you're starting out. It's rarely necessary. Anything else?
So you use this in your
Okay.
project?
Yes. Oh, which thing?
The life cycles?
Yeah, we use it all the time.
In
We
your
use it
sample,
for-
I mean.
Oh, sample? So we use it mostly for that. Mostly be like, is this thing changed? Or if you're using a router, I didn't talk about the router again, that's a separate thing. If you're using a router, is the ID and the URL different? Yes? Okay, go get me new data. So use the hooks for that. Yes?
Can you split the HTML out from the JavaScript?
Yes. So you wouldn't be using React.
So you can't like,
So we never ever separated HTML from JavaScript. We think we did. We didn't actually. Because what we did was we had JavaScript kind of in HTML because we had bindings, right? And then it looks at the bindings. And then you have to have a screen open for the HTML, a screen open for the JavaScript, a screen open for the CSS. So you have these things. So the way they talk about it is they're separations of technologies, not separation of concerns. So JavaScript and HTML. So like when you look at a render function, if I were to separate, let's say the on-clicks or the data binding from this, I'm not separating the concern there.
I meant physically separate it out of the file.
Like, what would you want to do? So you still need to reference a function somehow. So if you need like an on-click function or something,
I meant the actual HTML out into a different file, like a template.
so it's not HTML then.
No. Well,
This is all JavaScript. So these are JavaScript functions. These aren't this is not a template.
right, could you have like an in-place like token or like in-place include?
Yeah, so there's no like templating with that, if that's the question you're asking. That was what you're after, right?
Yeah, it sounds like,
This is it. So this is their style is that. That was their differentiator. That's the thing that they felt it works for them. So they use it in everything. Like Facebook uses it for all their stuff, and even like all your Farmville updates. Okay. Is Farmville still even a thing? And last time I used Facebook it was. Any other questions?
So if you were to compare
Yes.
Visual Studio Code with WebStorm, the latest features in VS Code.
I don't know. It's probably again, people are working on those things. So Facebook's actually really good. If you're doing .mvc, there's a React.mvc port that allows you to do React inside your MVC pages. It actually has MVC helpers and everything. So if you do MVC, like ASP.NET MVCs, or do that, there's the helpers there. So there's people there creating those plugins for VS Code. VS Code is a popular option now. It's starting to become one. A lot of people like it. So there is there. I don't know how it differentiates, to be honest. This is the thing we use now. So could there be things out there better? I'm sure. but I don't know. I'm not gonna worry about it. Not enough for me to care.
I know that TypeScript comes preloaded with VS Code.
In here too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, WebStorm's got that covered. Arlen?
Yes, Jeff. If you could give one piece of advice on how to be more competent and more professional software developers, what would it be?
Find someone else to ask besides me. Let me think. I think in general, learn the foundational things. Right? So if someone who's like at my level of experience, they're going to sound like, you don't have to listen to me obviously, but if you're in school, recently coming to school, don't learn things that are transitionary. So React, don't worry so much about React. Get great at JavaScript. It's not going anywhere. It's in your fridge. A future. Right? So learn those things. Learn object-oriented programming, learn functional programming. Learn both of them. Understand both of them. Understand the trade-offs. So like C# got benefits from F#. Because of that functional thing, they brought things into it. Right? All the link thing, all the links, syntax sugar, that's kind of functional. So that's the thing I would spend most time in, is become good at those things. Become good at the things that are gonna last. Like functional programming has been around since what, the 60s? But computers are too slow, so it didn't work. Now they work. So these things aren't new. Focus on the timeless things. If you're new, don't worry so much about React, but if you need to build a web app, and you don't know Ember or Angular or anything like that, it might be a good option for you. Because it's not a huge, you don't have to do everything different. If you're in a web forms app, you can just say, I'm gonna take this component and make this a React thing. Other things do that too. Lots of options out there. This is the one I'm comfortable with, so that's the one I'm gonna speak on. That would be the thing I'd say, focus on the things that are foundational, not transitionary. Make sense? And you're like, oh yes, two more. How much time are they gonna stall for? We keep this all the
Yeah, 2 more questions.
Okay.
So why did you choose this framework like over other abstract ones? Like what are the benefits or what type of apps would you go this way?
The pain point I had was I had a legacy web app. And I didn't want to work in legacy code. So I wanted something where I can convince the people who pay me, not enough, but they pay me. I need to convince them that this was a safe way to transition. So we didn't have to touch all those landmines and the scary code that sits over there. We just step aside, come around it, add this thing to the screen. And I found the other ones was like, we'd have to train everyone. We had a lot of people who weren't even that experienced in web. So it was very easy for it to transition to React that way. So it was a nice way to add functionality. Again, obviously there's tons of options. There's trade-offs. But for me, legacy web app, I would definitely go with that. Obviously I did. So, but there is new things now that maybe be improvements. Like I know Ember actually has gone to the unidirectional data flow like React did. So a lot of people go, like some other frameworks are going to this kind of, from a developer point of view, I do this thing when things change, it redoes all these things. It's like a server-side thing. So it's less things to worry about. If you have like mutation happening, or you have things that depend on other things, and like that thing changes, how's it gonna affect this thing over here? Like that stuff gets a little difficult. But I found this simplified a lot of that.
So the code maintenance is like significantly easier to maintain.
Yeah. And the thing I like about it, because you're making all these reusable components, we have like internal NPM. So if you have like an internal NuGet, we set up recently an internal NPM that has our reusable components. And we actually have API, we're trying to develop APIs for them and everything, that we just have this little thing you require, I work with companies Brock, we require this Brock module that does form validation, like a form element that does validation, everything like that. So you write this little tiny thing that becomes its own library and makes it easy to, we have other customers who want to use that thing over there, we just make a dependency and a package.json, and they have all those kind of cool components. So it allows us to really componentize things.
And now Angular 2 has ng Redux. So,
Yeah, so Redux, which is the popular Flux implementation, people have made it a version for it for Angular. The big thing is it's like all your states in one thing. It's a complex topic, I don't want to get into it, but it's an interesting idea. So things are sharing between these libraries. Again, if you focus on the foundations, you're going to be in an okay situation.
There's a question in the back.
I have a couple more slides after that, then we're done.
Hi, I'm Mark.
Yep.
So React is basically one-way data flow. How
Yes.
do you send the data from child components to the parent one?
Oh, through callbacks.
Two callbacks.
Or if you have like a flux architecture, something along the way that I didn't really want to get into, it's kind of complex, is you can trigger actions, and those trigger something that goes in the end and comes to the parent and comes all the way through. So that's a whole topic in itself and how that works. But in general, it's callbacks. When callbacks get too much, it's like too many layers down.
Yeah.
Then you may want to use something like emits an event. So event emitting, so people who know like event emitting CQRS stuff, is very similar. Is that you emit an event from this component, it knows where to emit events to, but it emits events in a separate, and then it eventually comes back down the state. It comes back down through it, but that's how it basically works. Okay, make sense? Okay, I gotta finish up. All right, takeaways. I told you guys about the Airbnb style guide yet? Redux is awesome. We use it. It's the way we solve Flux. It's the way to solve the problem you just asked about. And the guy who creates it has Egghead videos on Egghead, and he explains how he shows you the API and what is the code behind the API. It's a 2 kilobyte library, and he explains how he writes the helpers and like that. It's really cool. The guy's really awesome. Enzyme allows you to test your React components. You actually can test your view, because it's a view layer. You can actually test it since it's JavaScript. That gives you functionality to say, when I pass you this thing, the render functions should produce something like this. Okay? React Router, most of your apps are going to be a little component. They're going to be a whole single page app. React Router is the thing you use to do your routing. It's basically a ripoff of the Ember router. It's purposely, they actually got credit that it's a ripoff of the Ember router, so that's a good thing about open source. People are sharing ideas, go through. Leave you this. So at the beginning I had the Neil Gaiman, I don't know who Neil Gaiman is. So he has that famous commencement speech of like, make good art. It's my ripoff of that. So there's lots of things you're gonna see. You're gonna see lots of ugly code in your code base, I'm sure. And you may have written some of it. But again, if you're correcting people's code, again, be nice, empathize, but don't be permissive. Because the problem with the worst part of bad code is it's copy and paste fodder. This is our standard. Look, here's this code, I'm gonna copy, bring it over here. So it has this like exponential effect. Or if you allow that shitty code in there, sorry, poopy code, for people at home. If you allow that code in there, it's not going away. And then junior developers, nothing wrong with them, you guys are great. You're gonna be us one day, making the same mistakes. They're gonna see that, and like that's our problem with, we have an old legacy code base. People see that and say, oh, this is how they do this thing. And I see it and I cry. And I say, that's not how we do that thing. This is not that bad, right? I hate this. That code drives me crazy. It's like, why? Why do we have to do all this? We don't need that. Magic numbers, like what does that 75 even mean? All those things, like what does that even mean? Like value. It's like it's no better than X, right? Like, int X equals. That's better. Yes?
Also, the assumption is that it's a scale of 100. You got 5.
Correct. But it doesn't matter. For this code, all you care about, and again, you can say that this is our scale. This function says if it's greater than our mixed criteria score, then it's not. Simple. You know, it's like, oh, it's just a small little function. It matters because it's examples. Right? Everyone know the endless arrow pattern? Everyone see code like that? So much fun to debug. Breakpoints. You write unit tests, you debug way less, by the way. Actually, just debug the unit test, but it's easier. It's better. That's it. Okay. So if you want to reach out to me, I think I usually say this. They're in order of the things I like. So the email is there. Actually, there should be an inbox logo, but not a Gmail one. But yeah, that's it. Cool? Good. Thank you.
This is not intended for children. It's just toys. Like what? You have to be 13 or older to use for this program.